When it comes to terrifying prehistoric monsters, some of them are just too insane to even fathom. Take this one, for example. This is the creature that could swallow you without chewing. Welcome back, I'm here. And today we're going to look at a prehistoric monster so massive and unhinged it didn't just bite people, it inhaled them whole. Fossils tell us that over 400 million years ago, our planet had its very own monsters. And what makes these creatures so scary is that they lived in an actual hell world. They had to be massive to survive in such a place. Otherwise they'd be someone's lunch. But how do you get big enough to rule a landscape like that? Well, by eating literally everything. In the case of our protagonist, that meant every single creature in sight, including other predators. Yes, this creature was a real-life vampire. The scientists who discovered it named it vampire squid because they assumed it would have looked like a squid. But we'll get to that later. Let's talk about why it was called vampire squid. This creature lived in what is now Western Australia during the Devonian period. It was there that scientists found its fossils in the Gogo Formation. Its scientific name is Asterias draconis, but you can call it vampire squid. What makes it a vampire is that it's a member of the extinct class called the Placodermi. Now these guys were huge. They also had hard armor made out of bony plates. But don't let their names fool you. These placoderms weren't fish. Yes, they lived in water, but that's about their only similarity to fish. See, placoderms were more closely related to tetrapods, which includes all four-legged vertebrates like us. However, tetrapods can move on land or in water, while placoderms were strictly aquatic. We think they gave rise to fish, which is part of the reason why we mistakenly lump them in with the fishes. But enough about their ancestry. Let's go back to the vampire stuff. Like other placoderms, vampire squid had hard shell-like armor covering its head and torso. Their armor consisted of several movable plates held together by ligaments. Some placoderms had weak spots in their armor, but not this guy. Their armor was thick and provided powerful protection. But if armor wasn't enough, it had sharp spines running down its back that could seriously injure any monster dumb enough to try and eat it. However, the scariest thing about this monster was its mouth. Now, fortunately for us, it never got the memo about personal space, so we'll be able to observe it from afar. Its mouth was located under its body where it used to slurp prey into its mouth. Wait, that doesn't sound so bad. In fact, it sounds kind of cute. Well, if you thought that, just wait until you hear what it ate. This was no dainty eater. No, sir. When it opened its mouth, it was so wide it looked like a gaping abyss. Once something entered its mouth, there was no escape. There are even scars on its mouth that indicate it had some pretty tough meals. But don't worry, this was only the appetizer. See, vampire squid had suction cups lining the inside of its mouth, like hundreds of tiny mouths eating away at its prey. Also, the teeth of vampire squid were unique among placoderms, consisting of two sets. First, it had regular teeth up front, and then in the back, it had teeth shaped like cones. These teeth tore apart the flesh of its victims. Once its prey was ground up, it used a tongue like a trap to collect the morsels and pushed it to its throat. That is to say, it used its tongue to capture its food and prevent it from escaping. The most impressive part about all of this was the jaw. Because the jaw was so wide, it created a partial vacuum when it opened its mouth. This made eating easy since prey would be sucked right in. But hold on. It gets worse. Remember how I said that this monster ate other monsters, including other predators? Well, its jaw is also flexible, meaning that it could eat slippery prey. You see, if it was a slippery fish, many predators would struggle to keep it in their mouth. They'd end up spitting it out after a few moments. But not this guy. Its jaw would just adjust to better fit the struggling meal and swallow it whole. So this thing ate other predators because its mouth was so unhinged that it could suck anything in. And all of that was just the appetizer. The main course was anything it wanted. It ate plants, animals, even rocks. And I mean anything. Its stomach was filled with grinding stones that turned whatever it ate into a thick sludge. This sludge was useful because it could then absorb nutrients from the ground-up remains of its meals. But not everything went into its super strong stomach. Sometimes the pressure would be too much. When this happened, it would regurgitate the remains of its last meal to make room for another. Now, you might be asking yourself, if it ate so much, why didn't it just evolve to have a bigger stomach? Well, perhaps it did. But unfortunately, we've yet to find the fossil evidence to confirm it. Instead, we know that some members of its family developed bigger guts to deal with larger meals. Speaking of meals, the way this thing ate is pretty similar to how hagfish eat. If you haven't heard of hagfish before, then it's time to get acquainted with one of nature's least appetizing creatures. You see, hagfish are jawless fish that burrow through the seafloor in search of prey. They're scavengers that will happily dine on dead carcasses. But hagfish aren't equipped to chew, so they just swallow their food whole. As you might expect, this can cause blockages in their digestive system. To solve this problem, they produce slime to break down their meals. This slime is made up of mucus that dissolves in their stomachs. By the way, this slime is so strong that it has been suggested as a possible addition to bulletproof vests. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hagfish slime and vampire squid. What does it all mean? Why are we talking about hagfish at all? Well, the answer is simple. They remind us that evolution is always working. We think of evolution as something set in stone, but that's not really true. Evolution happens all the time. Creatures are always changing, adapting to new circumstances and new prey. And that brings us back to the vampire squid. See, scientists think that vampire squid were descendants of smaller placoderms that chose violence. They grew rapidly to become apex predators. But they didn't just stop at being big. They kept growing larger and larger. Fossil evidence suggests that there was a link between the size of vampire squid and the amount of prey available. More food meant more growth. At its peak, it reached a length of 6 meters. That's around 20 feet. It weighed almost 3,000 kilograms. That's around 6,600 pounds. That's heavier than a walrus and longer than a great white shark. To put it in perspective, it was the size of a Tyrannosaurus rex, but it was aquatic and armored. Can you imagine fighting one of these things? Maybe you could shoot it with a harpoon or stab it with a sword, right? Well, maybe, but it would take a lot. Its armor was so tough that even though it lived 400 million years ago, it still took paleontologists years to chip away at it. But for all its toughness, it went extinct along with every other placoderm 359 million years ago. Nobody knows for sure why they went extinct. Perhaps the oxygen levels changed, or maybe there was a mass extinction event. Whatever the case, these monsters are gone for good. But you don't need to worry too much. If they hadn't gone extinct, they would have hunted you down and swallowed you without chewing.